13 Signs You're Quietly Becoming Spiritually Fearless. Carl Jung. There is a moment in every life, a quiet, almost imperceptible shift, when the soul begins to demand honesty. It does not knock politely. It does not wait for your comfort. It confronts you with a question so simple yet so terrifying. Who are you, really? To see oneself clearly is an act of courage few are willing to attempt. Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." We all wear masks. Some are subtle, almost invisible, like the faint smile that greets a colleague each morning. Others are more elaborate, constructed over years, careers, reputations, social roles, even entire identities. These masks form the persona, the outward projection of the ego that shields us from vulnerability, judgment, and the raw truth of our inner world. Jung described the persona as a compromise between individual and society, between the private and the public, between what one is and what one should appear to be. But there comes a point in the psychological journey when the persona begins to dissolve. It does not shatter in a violent explosion. Instead, it cracks slowly, like ice over a hidden stream, revealing glimpses of the authentic self beneath. The process is both terrifying and liberating, a paradox that Jung frequently observed. The more the ego resists, the more insistently the hidden self asserts its presence. There exists an uncharted territory within each of us, a vast inner landscape more intricate and mysterious than any physical world we traverse. Most of us wander through it unconsciously, guided by habit, fear, and social expectation. Yet, hidden beneath the surface, the currents of the psyche flow. Shadows, desires, archetypes, and impulses interweaving into a complex living terrain. To navigate this landscape with clarity and courage is to begin the true work of individuation. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Fear is often imagined as a roaring beast, a monumental force that must be confronted with dramatic acts of bravery. But in truth, spiritual courage does not reveal itself in grand gestures. It flickers quietly, persistently, in the subtle choices we make each day, the moments when we refuse to lie to ourselves, when we honor our integrity despite discomfort, when we choose awareness over convenience. Jung observed, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." The first flames of fearlessness ignite not in conquest, but in conscious choice. Within the human psyche, nothing remains static. Strength becomes weakness, control becomes chaos, certainty collapses into doubt. Jung called this phenomenon enantiodromia, the inevitable swing of the psyche from one extreme to its opposite. It is not a threat to stability, but a natural, even sacred mechanism of psychological and spiritual growth. When we resist it, life feels like a series of conflicts, an unending tension. But when we recognize it, enantiodromia becomes an ally, a signal that transformation is underway. Every psychological phenomenon is a function of the totality, Jung wrote. Enantiodromia is the psyche's way of restoring balance, guiding us toward wholeness. We rarely realize how much of what we see in others is a reflection of ourselves. The person who irritates us, the one whose success we envy, the friend whose joy or sorrow elicits a visceral response. These encounters are not merely external events. They are mirrors reflecting hidden aspects of our unconscious. Jung described projection as a fundamental psychic mechanism. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The mirror effect is not a judgment, it is an invitation. Consider David once more. He found himself repeatedly frustrated by a colleague's overconfidence, a sense of arrogance that seemed exaggerated and unnecessary. At first, he blamed the other person entirely. but upon reflection he noticed a pattern. The very traits that irritated him mirrored aspects of himself he had long suppressed: his ambition, his desire for recognition, the assertive edge he feared showing. The mirror effect had surfaced, offering insight that no self-help book or external advice could provide. By observing his reactions, David glimpsed the hidden currents of his own psyche. The abyss is alluring. It whispers promises of power, mastery, and liberation. The deeper we venture into shadow work, the more seductive the idea that knowledge alone grants authority over ourselves and others. But the abyss is not a tool. It is a mirror, a test, and sometimes a warning. Jung warned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The darkness, however, carries peril. To confront it without humility, without ethical grounding, is to invite distortion, arrogance, and harm. David, after months of shadow mapping and careful integration, experienced a subtle shift. His newfound awareness allowed him to detect manipulation, deceit, and weakness in others. At first, he felt exhilarated, a sense of clarity, even superiority. Yet soon he noticed a dangerous edge creeping in. The very insights meant to liberate had become a lens of judgment. Colleagues were no longer collaborators. They were subjects to be read, anticipated, and subtly controlled. The abyss had whispered, and he had almost succumbed. It was a near miss, a reminder that insight without ethics is a treacherous gift. The journey of the self, after months of shadow work, mirror reflection, and cautious confrontation with the abyss, begins to reach a subtle yet profound transformation. This is the alchemy of integration, a process that is less about achieving a static state of enlightenment and more about witnessing the dynamic interplay of ego, shadow, and self, dancing together in a continuous, evolving synthesis. Jung once wrote, "The psyche is a self-regulating system, always seeking equilibrium. Integration is the artful negotiation between the parts of the self, a symbolic death and rebirth that reshapes consciousness itself." The culmination of the inner journey is not an endpoint, but a radiance, a light that begins within and extends outward, touching the world in subtle yet profound ways. Individual courage, once internalized, becomes a catalyst for collective evolution. Jung observed, "The collective unconscious is the reservoir of the experiences of our ancestors, a psychological inheritance that shapes culture and consciousness." Every step toward self-awareness resonates beyond the personal psyche. Each act of conscious bravery, ethical reflection, and shadow integration contributes to the unfolding of humanity's latent potential. Consider Sarah again, now months past her initial awakening. Her courage no longer manifests in isolated personal choices alone. It begins to ripple through her community. A colleague notices her calm, fearless presence in moments of conflict and chooses to respond with patience rather than defensiveness. Another is inspired to examine their own impulses, their shadow, their habitual reactions. Small acts of integrity radiate outward like concentric ripples on water, subtle yet transformative. Integration is no longer private. It is relational, social, and profoundly collective. David experiences a similar phenomenon. His previously tense workplace environment softens as he models conscious engagement, ethical awareness, and reflective courage. The mirror effect, which once revealed only personal shadow, now extends outward. His own ethical and conscious choices influence others to confront their shadows, embrace accountability, and act with integrity. In closing, the abyss is both challenge and teacher. It reminds us that fearlessness and shadow integration are not simply personal achievements. They are responsibilities. Knowledge of self is not license for manipulation, nor a justification for superiority. The abyss demands ethics, reflection, and humility, teaching that true mastery arises not in domination, but in conscious, morally anchored engagement with power and insight. The courage that began as self-directed is now seeding systemic change. This is the alchemy of the collective unconscious, the realization that the inner and outer worlds are not separate, but intertwined, responsive, and co-creative. As we arrive at the final chapter of this journey, the path we've walked, the confrontation with shadow, the dissolution of the persona, the integration of inner archetypes, the awakening of courage, reveals itself not as a conclusion but as an invitation. Jung reminds us, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Spiritual fearlessness, the essence of this awakening, is not a destination to reach, nor a summit to conquer. It is a threshold, an ever-expanding horizon where consciousness meets infinity, and where the self, eternally emerging, continues its luminous evolution. Imagine Sarah standing at the edge of a cliff at twilight. The wind stirs her hair, carrying whispers of distant rivers and forests, echoes of the lives she has touched, and fragments of her own inner journey. Beneath her, the valleys spread in darkness and light, shadows mingling with gleaming reflections of the setting sun. She senses both fragility and vastness within herself, a microcosm mirroring the infinite landscape before her. Here, at this threshold, she feels the pulse of life itself, a dynamic interplay of courage, insight, and boundless potential. David experiences a parallel awakening. He walks through a city street, ordinary yet extraordinary, where faces, gestures, and moments of connection reflect the intricate tapestry of human consciousness. He sees reflections of his own growth in others, the subtle integrity of a stranger, the spark of insight in a conversation, the resilience in everyday acts of courage. The realization dawns that spiritual fearlessness is relational as well as personal. It is the conscious acknowledgement that his presence, however small, resonates within a vast collective field, touching lives, rippling outward, influencing the unconscious currents of humanity. The mirror effect amplifies at the threshold. What we have integrated within ourselves reflects outward, shaping relational and collective dynamics. Ethical courage, conscious presence, and shadow acceptance inspire resonance in others. The infinite, therefore, is relational. It is the interplay of countless consciousnesses, each shaping the other, each reflecting the emergent light of self-awareness and courage. Jung observed, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. At the threshold, this principle expands. The world becomes both mirror and co-creator in the ongoing evolution of consciousness. Legends remind us of the hero's eternal return. The journey is cyclical, ever renewing. There is no final summit, no ultimate endpoint. The threshold of the infinite is both horizon and starting point. Every act of awareness, every integration, every ethical choice is a step into the uncharted, a pulse of consciousness contributing to both personal evolution and the awakening of the collective. Reflective engagement. Consider your own threshold. In what ways are you stepping into the unknown, guided by courage, ethical insight, and conscious awareness? Comment if you feel yourself at this threshold, standing at the edge of infinite potential, ready to engage with life fully, fearlessly, and consciously. In conclusion, the journey of spiritual fearlessness is continuous. From confronting shadow to dissolving persona, from integration to collective influence, each stage has prepared us for this threshold, the space of boundless potential, infinite emergence, and conscious courage. The self, eternally unfolding, is never complete. It is a dynamic participant in the ever-expanding field of existence. Jung's insight resonates deeply here. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The threshold of the infinite is the living testament to this truth, where consciousness, courage, and ethical integration converge in the perpetual dance of self and world. You are not here to arrive. You are here to engage, to illuminate, to act consciously. You are not here to be normal. You are here to be awake, courageous, and eternally emerging. Step forward, fully present, fully conscious, and witness the infinite unfold through your own life, through your actions, and through your ever-expanding awareness. The threshold awaits, and with each choice you cross it anew, becoming both the traveler and the horizon, the flame and the light, the self and the infinite.